Today, we're going to be talking about boobs.
Hi everyone, welcome back to my channel. If you're new, my name is Emily and I'm a mum of 3 boys. I'd love for you to subscribe and stick around if you like what you see. But today I'm going to be sharing with you my top breastfeeding tips that I wish I'd known before I started breastfeeding. So I've exclusively breastfed all 3 of my children, my first 2 for over a year each, and Jackson is currently 4.5 months old, so I'm still feeding him. I think when I was pregnant, I had this misconception that breastfeeding was going to be this really easy thing to do. And while it is a very natural thing, it's actually quite tricky at times and it takes technique and perseverance. A quick disclaimer, I'm obviously not a doctor or a lactation advisor. I am just an experienced mum of 3, and whether you choose to bottle feed or breastfeed, who cares? As long as your baby is fed and thriving, that is the main thing. We all know the benefits of breastfeeding, so I'm not going to go into all of that. This is just my experience and what I've learned along the way. So my first and most important tip is to make sure your latch is correct. If it's not correct, then that is when you get pain, because your nipple will be rubbing on the hard part of your baby's palate, which is the roof of their mouth. If your latch isn't correct, it can affect how much milk comes out, and it can also make your nipple scratch against that hard palate. So it's really, really important for successful breastfeeding. There will be a small amount of pain in the first 2 weeks. That is normal. If you're pregnant or you've just started breastfeeding, it is definitely worth doing some research now as to what a correct latch looks like. I will link a couple of videos down below that I think show it really, really well. But the way I will explain to you a correct latch is you want to see your baby biting on your breast rather than looking like they're sucking. So you want to see this bone here and their jaw moving like this on your breast rather than the sucking, because if they're biting, the nipple is sat at the back of their throat, which is where it wants to be, rather than at the front of their mouth rubbing. The way that I would get the correct latch is I would rub my nipple on my baby's nose or top lip, and that makes them open their mouth really wide, and then you get as much boob and nipple as you can into their really wide mouth, and then that normally makes it in the correct place. But definitely do some research. I'll do the links down below. If you think the latch isn't correct, do not be afraid to take your baby off of your breast and start again. Yes, they're going to be upset and they're going to cry, but it's better to get it right. So put your baby finger into their mouth, just get them off and start again. And they probably will cry when you take them off, but then you have a big wide mouth to try again. My second tip is to try out different positions, especially in the early days. My favorite ones were the traditional cradle position in a chair or on our bed, or the side lay was also really good for relaxing, or the rugby hold as well. By trying out different positions, it can help stimulate different parts of the breast and then also distribute the rubbing as well, so it's hopefully not as painful. And it can also help you to discover which ways work best for your baby and for you as well, because everyone is different. My next tip is, if you are struggling, get help early. Don't be afraid to ask for help. It's a really difficult thing to do, and nowadays when you have a baby in hospital, like when I had my son Fraser, I had him at 2 o'clock in the morning and I was told that I was ready to go home at 8 o'clock in the morning. So that really was not enough time to establish breastfeeding. But once they see you breastfeed a couple of times and they're happy, they just send you off on your way. Call a lactation advisor, call your hospital. I know where I live, they have a Breast Friends cafe. There's all kinds of help out there if you look for it. Don't be afraid to get help. It's better to do that rather than quit. In my experience, breastfeeding is really hard for the first 2 or 3 weeks. So if you can get through that, by the end of the 2 or 3 weeks, you know what you're doing, your baby knows what you're doing, and breastfeeding becomes this really easy thing where you can get all of the benefits from it, like no sterilizing, it's portable, you know, all of those things. So don't give up, just try and get help. Right, so my next tip is really, really important. You need to keep up your fluids and your snacks. You need to drink enough water for yourself, but also to feed your baby all of this liquid. So you need to be drinking all of the time. Carry around a bottle with you if you can. And I used to always think when the baby's drinking, I should be drinking. So when I was breastfeeding, I would have bottles of water around me. I actually ended up hiding them under my breastfeeding chair, in the cracks of our sofa, etc. And I carried around this blue bottle with me at all times as well. It's worth telling your partner or your mum or whoever's going to be helping you in the early days to make sure you drink enough. So when you're breastfeeding, if you don't have a glass of water with you, your husband really needs to get into a habit of bringing that over to you. Drinking loads of water is also a really good way to boost your supply. There are loads of products and supplements that you can buy, but I think the most effective way is to just drink more and to pump. Same goes for snacks. Treat yourself. You are burning an extra 500 calories a day breastfeeding, so get some Danishes in, get some yummy snacks in to keep up the calories in your milk for your baby. If you're not eating very much, then your baby probably isn't getting very much, so keep up your wholesome meals, keep up your calories. I know you probably want to lose the baby weight, but it is the best thing to do in the early days, and breastfeeding will also help you get that flat stomach back as well. Next tip is don't clock watch and don't compare yourself to others either. With my first son, I became obsessed with how long he'd fed for, on what side. I had all these fancy apps on my phone, but really it stressed me out more than it helped, I think. With my subsequent babies, I've been more relaxed. I've just fed on demand for the first 8 weeks, and then I've had a bit more routine after that. But I would just feed on demand on the side that feels fullest, and don't compare yourself to your friends that bottle feed. It's a completely different thing. And don't even compare yourself to your friends that breastfeed, because all of our bodies are different. Our babies can take more or less. My baby that I have now feeds like within 5 or 10 minutes, whereas my first son, I felt like I was sat there for a good half an hour. Yeah, our bodies are different and our babies are different, and that actually brings me to my next tip, which is to try and be as relaxed as you can. I know it's really hard when you're a new mum. I was quite an anxious new mum, but by being relaxed and actually looking at your baby when you're feeding them, that will help with your milk flow. So try not to be thinking about work or having an argument with your husband while you're feeding. Just try and relax, and it will help your milk flow. The essential products you'll need for breastfeeding are a good supportive chair and pillows. They don't have to be specifically for breastfeeding, as long as you have a good chair and some pillows around. Breastfeeding is actually quite physically demanding on your back and your arms and the way you position yourself, so it's really important that you have good support around you. Also, you'll definitely need to get yourself some breast pads. I have used Lancino in the past and also Boots Own, but you'll need them because you will probably have some leaks and you don't want any embarrassing moments when you're wearing grey and you've got a big black mark on you. So get yourself some breast pads as well. Definitely get yourself a water bottle as well, so you can carry it around with you and always keep yourself hydrated, and also some muslins for spit up, and also if you're breastfeeding out in public, they can help to sort of cover you up. You can get fancy breastfeeding cover-ups, but I think that sometimes they almost bring more attention to you than if you just do this. Like, I'm breastfeeding him now, but I don't think the average person would walk past and notice. I also just wanted to say that how you know that your baby is getting enough is if they're having at least 4 or 5 wet or dirty nappies a day. They seem quite content in between feeds, and they're regularly putting on weight. If they're doing all of those things, then you're doing a great job. My next tip is to make sure that you burp and wind your baby. It is a complete myth that breastfed babies don't need wind. They absolutely do. They still take air down, and I like to burp between sides or even halfway through a feed, because I find that if I burp him, then he can also take more and will sleep for longer. So make sure you wind them. Sometimes I burp Jackson for as long as I've fed for. So that is it for my breastfeeding tips. I really hope you found them helpful. Please give this video a big thumbs up if you did, and don't be shy, ask me any questions you have in the comments below and I will make sure to reply to you. And yes, thank you, and I will see you very soon. Bye!